Hello, hello. So I'm trying to go live here with Dr. Vela van Tricht, who is a medical doctor and an acclaimed eye surgeon, has worked all around the world, teacher, author, a specialist in recovery from and prevention of chronic stress and burnout, a Reiki master, speaker of 3 different languages, or is it 4? So Dr. Van Tricht is absolutely remarkable. Dr. V, as she's known, V for vitality, she says. So I would very much like Dr. V to jump on and join me, hopefully. And as I want to discuss how to recover from and even prevent yourself from being a victim of chronic stress. So chronic stress, the medical term for that is allostatic load. The ultimate version of it, I suppose, if you don't get your chronic stress under control, can be burnout, particularly prevalent with professionals, medical professionals, servicemen and women, etc. And it's when the stress triggers build up so much that your body really goes into shutdown to protect itself, to protect your brain and body. So we don't want to get to that stage, but it's very easy for things to go wrong because, according to a number of reports, about 80% of people in the Western world are dealing with the negative impacts of chronic stress or overload. So I would like to bring our specialist in this area online, if we possibly can, Dr. Villa van Tricht, to talk with you about her advice, Dr. V's advice for dealing with and recovering from chronic stress. So let me see if I can bring her on any minute, hopefully. We are in 2 completely different hemispheres. I'm in Australia at the moment. I'm Angela Wright, if you don't know me, co-founder at Get Your Boom Back. We've been in the dietary supplements business for many years now because we found a particular ingredient that was not being well served by anybody else, and so we wanted to be sure to bring it to people's attention. But oh good, Dr. V is requesting to join us. Hooray! So I'm just adding Dr. V now, live from the UK, and we're going to be talking about dealing with, recovery from, prevention of the effects of stress and burnout. And here we are, Dr. V. We actually made it with all of these different technological tools, and here you are. Thank you so much for jumping on.
I just got challenged by Facebook also to turn my phone in the other direction. It's really, this is the first time I had to do that.
Well, you actually made it, so I'm very grateful to you for your patience there in the UK. Oh, there you are, you're back. Good.
Okay, it's standing. Yay.
So I think this evening, while we've struggled with various bits of technology, has been pretty indicative, perhaps, or an example of the sort of stress that people deal with, because of course technology can be one of the big stresses in life, can't it? Whether you're using it for social or for business or whatever, so that can be one of the frustrations. So would you be so kind as to introduce yourself a little bit, and particularly in terms of your understanding of chronic stress and burnout, as I know that's one of your particular areas of specialism.
Yes, of course. For the last 10 years, I've been actually studying how people can avoid burnout because we, as you said, we are constantly stressed in our society by the traffic when you drive anywhere, by technology. We are never really alone anymore because constantly our phones will make a noise or alert us of a new email. So we're like constantly busy, 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 and it's really hard to turn off. And that's something that I teach people also, how to turn all of this off. But unfortunately, a lot of people suffer with chronic stress, not only because of the technology, but also because we don't detox our bodies properly anymore. So there's many reasons for this. So I had burnout myself 15 years ago, and it was so bad. I was in a wheelchair, couldn't walk anymore, lost my job, and had to leave the country, lost a really profitable income and stuff like that. So I really had to look into how can I heal myself, because the allopathic doctors didn't know what to do with me. They all gave me different diagnoses or didn't know what to do with me, and there was absolutely no help available for me. So I searched and put everything together of the things that worked to get me back on track. And so I have two missions. First of all, I want to help people to de-stress, like what you say, avoid the chronic stress, and what you can do to support your body so that you don't get burnout. Plus, I have an online program where I actually get people out of burnout, so that they can recover from this chronic stress situation. So yeah, that took me 10 years to put everything together, and it's a huge mission that I have, because it's such a big problem worldwide, and stress causes so many diseases. I see it like I'm an eye specialist. I work in the UK at the moment. I've lived all over the world and worked as a doctor, healed many people allopathically, but I also do emotional healing and lifestyle advice. And I also coach people one on one, because I see people holistically. And when I get somebody with an eye problem, I look at the whole thing. Like I talk to them about their microbiome and stuff like that. So yeah, so I think I'm the first integrative ophthalmologist, at least here in Wales. So yeah, and also I published 2 books. So from being burnout in a wheelchair, not being able to work or even walk, to being a single mom of 3 children, working 2 full-time jobs and publishing 2 books. So clearly I've discovered something that brought me out of burnout and gave me so much energy. And I also love the supplements that I get from you, because a few months ago I started taking them, and immediately I felt like I had an extra boom. So
Yes.
this is one of the advice that I give people, to take really good care of themselves inside and outside the environment, as well as what they put inside of them.
Thank you. I mean, your story is quite incredible. And we've got Stacey here. Stacey says, hi, Dr. Villa. Thanks so much for
Hello,
jumping
Stacey.
on, Stacey. If you've got any questions, just ask away, please. And Dr. V will do her best to answer. Now, I know we are going to aim to have a full webinar tomorrow in 24 hours, just under 24 hours time, when we want to go into detail on this. But in the meantime, can you talk a little bit about why you think so many people are affected now, and are struggling with chronic stress, and how that can so often lead to burnout?
Well, yeah, as I said, first of all, we never alone anymore because of the technology. We constantly have pings from our phone. There's messages. There's new Facebook stories that you have to watch. There's new emails coming in, even in the weekends and in the evenings when people used to go home and relax. Now we're constantly inundated with this technology that seeks our attention. And it's not only that, I'm not a big fan of having a constant um, exposure to the radiation that the Wi-Fi, which is now everywhere, gives us. Unfortunately, like my children sleep on their iPad almost, and I have my phone next to me, which I teach everybody, get your electronics out of the room at least, because it stops you from sleeping. You know, the blue light from your phone um, tells your brain it's daytime. So that's why people have problems sleeping if they look at the blue light or the screen of their phone or their iPad late at night. So that's one of the reasons. And unfortunately, there's not enough nutrition in our food usually. That's why we need to supplement ourselves, because we know that the way that our food is grown now is not the same as 100 years ago, and the minerals that used to be in the soil are not there as concentrated anymore as it was originally. So we often need to supplement ourselves despite of eating healthy vegetables and fruit. And there's also I'm not a specialist in the food industry, but in a lot of food has a lot of chemicals in it, the antibiotics that are in there, which kill our microbiome. So our body is basically under a constant attack from the food we eat. Even if we think it's healthy, there might be chemicals on there that are not healthy. So we need to like put in an extra effort to balance all of that out. I mean, at the moment, I'm drinking a detox tea because I know, even though I don't consciously take toxins, we were always exposed to it, even from the products you wash your hair with or the cleaning products that are used in your home.
Yeah.
Um,
I,
or the plastic bottles that you might use to take water to work. So we're constantly exposed to toxins like that. And then, of course, the busyness, the streets are so busy. There's so many crazy drivers, which causes stress because every time somebody jumps in front of you in the car, your body thinks like, oh, I almost got eaten by a tiger. And that stress sits in your body because you're sitting still in a car while you really want to go running to get that stress out of your body, but you can't because you're sitting still in a car. So I've learned a new technique recently that when somebody does that to me in traffic and it gives me a big fright, I kind of try and shake it off. Like I physically
yes.
shake my arms or give a good ah just to have tell my body, ooh, okay, there was some form of release, and don't store that stress inside the whole time. I mean, I had a very, very nice yoga retreat recently where we actually released all of that anger that was stored in our body, and the fear from little things like, you know, driving in traffic where people do crazy things. Of course, there's a bigger fears in people's life that came up. I mean, we dealt with like huge stories, but that's for another time. But yeah, just so physical movement is so beneficial. That's why exercise is so good for us. Because when you go for a run or a fast walk, your body actually releases those stress hormones and the tension from your body. This is just one of the ways.
I think what you've just said there is really important. And I was reading some quite detailed research about how animals, if animals are under threat, for example, I think a lot of us have seen the David Attenborough clip of all of the snakes trying to eat the little lizard thing, and the little lizard was surrounded by this whole ball of snakes, and that my idea of hell, and he managed to somehow escape and scamper away and up over the rocks and so on. So the thing with animals is when they have a huge fright like that, they get caught or they nearly get caught, automatically they run away. Well, what science has now discovered, which may seem obvious, and yet it's quite important when you think it through to the logical conclusion, what science has now discovered is that the hormones, you know, the stress hormones, the cortisol, the adrenaline, and so on, when those are triggered, if you don't physically get up and move, you know, with high intensity movements, really like running for your life, if you don't do that, you don't get rid of those stress hormones. Whereas the hormones that are released when you run for your life actually counteract and help to flush them all out. And yet what happens? What happens if if a human being has a terrible fright, we say, oh, sit down, have a cup of tea, go and lie down. And you know, if it's say it's a serviceman or woman and they're shot, of course they are on a stretcher in a bed, completely immobilized. And it's very often the same when we have minor stress triggers as well. You talked about, you know, being stuck in a car when you have an issue and perhaps somebody runs out in front of you or whatever and gives you a fright. We're so sedentary now that we don't typically run away or have some extreme movement when we get these stress triggers, and so they just build up. It's like a bottle of water that builds up, except it's building up with all these toxins and fears and worries. That's the problem, isn't it? And our bodies aren't really designed to work like that. So that's why sometimes we need some help to deal with that cortisol, that stress hormone, which can otherwise get out of control. So I see we've got John Shepherd watching. Thanks for jumping on, John, as well as Stacey Marie Ward. Thank you very much indeed. So we're talking about Dr. V has these 3 secrets for dealing with chronic stress, and the extreme end of that can be burnout, which can be a huge problem, particularly for professionals, servicemen and women, and people of all sizes and shapes and dispositions, really, because so many of us have such are always on, sort of hyper busy lives now. That is the problem. So I know with your burnout work, and you're a specialist in that area, Dr. V, I know you deal with a lot of professionals and medical professionals, and I would think that's particularly prevalent in that area. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, medical doctors and nurses are on a constant stress because they deal with life and death issues. Plus, the patients usually come in with a heap of pain, anxiety, fear, which rubs off on the people who they work with or they encounter. So it's not a nice environment. It's not like always a happy environment. But wherever I work, I try and create a happy environment. When I operate on people, well, first of all, I play music that makes everybody in the room feel happy. And second of all, I talk to my patients when they're anxious. I ask them about the best holiday they've ever had in their life, get their minds off to, it's a bit of travel to a different place where you feel happier. So there's a few things we can do, but obviously it's not so the whole work of working with people's lives is very stressful. The environment, the emotions are there. You work in a place where there's a lot of radiation and chemicals present also, and the problem is, of course, depending where you work, there's a big overload of work on too little staff for the aging population, too little doctors, too little nurses, so they feel overloaded. They feel like they have no control and they can't cope and they don't have enough energy. They start worrying about making medical mistakes, which is a big, big risk, which is another reason why I talk to medical students and doctors and nurses, because if you're so exhausted and tired, it's only there will be mistakes made, and it can be very serious for both parties involved. So that's another reason why I really want to get in front of the people who work in the medical field, and also often they don't take care of themselves. They don't ask for help. Unfortunately, I had like a colleague of mine who was only 1 or 2 years older than me last year just dropped dead. He had no signs beforehand. He just spoke to me a few days earlier. He said, like, I can't do this anymore. They keep on giving me more and more work. I've told them I can't see so many patients in the day. And I said to him, well, good, it's about time because I know you're working really hard. And boom, he's gone 2 days later.
Wow.
And of course, there's a lot of suicide in these jobs. I mean, in the medical field, also in anybody else who works with um, obviously people who work in the army and the ambulance people and who deal with life in that situations, that it is very stressful. So they need to pay extra attention, to take good care of themselves, inside and out, as I said. So do you want to go a little bit more into details how that you want to, how do you take good care of yourself so that
I
the
would love
stress
you
from
to
the
do that.
environment
I would
doesn't
love
get
you
you
to.
down?
And I think it's so important because you're talking about people having, near misses or fatalities through stress, really, and through worry and overwork. Well, one of my family members had a very near miss last week, and he was complaining about indigestion, and luckily went and got it checked out, and they rushed him straight in and had him on the operating table, and his arteries were so blocked. One was about 98% and one was in the late 80%. And if he hadn't gone in then, he would probably have just dropped dead from a heart attack. um,
Yeah.
so there are going to be some changes. The joke is that his wife said she's not going to buy any indigestion tablets next time, and he won't notice. It'll be too late. But it's just so important to take really good care of oneself, because if you don't look after yourself, you can't look after anybody else, can you? So yes, we'd love you to go into a bit more depth if you would, please.
Yeah, you know that I'm a very, very, very avid believer in to stay away from toxins. So, for instance, my biggest dislike is towards tobacco smoke, and they now even found that those vape things are even more
Yeah.
toxic, right? So there's like how many chemicals are there in tobacco? It's like more than 500 chemicals that are used to clean toilets and stuff like that. They know it's so bad for your survival. for your health, for your environment. Even worse, anybody who lives with a smoker is exposed to the same danger. They will, lose years of their life. Even the pets also get a mouth cancer from licking, the dogs and the cats that live with a smoker, they can also get mouth cancer
Wow.
because they lick the smoke of their fur.
Wow.
So, I mean, it influences a lot of people negatively, even the ones that don't smoke themselves, but the ones that are exposed to it. So that's one of the things that I really don't like. And another interesting thing is because I did study this longevity extensively, and interestingly enough, I found that there's specific cities in the world where people die younger. And it's not, I mean, if we just look at the Western world, because you can't really compare apples and pears in longevity, let's just look at the Western world. I mean, for instance, in Monaco, the survival is 90 years. I mean, the expected
Life
age
expectancy.
is, yeah, life expectancy, sorry, is 90 years. And let's say in the States, it's maybe 78 or something. But there's certain cities where people life expectancy is only 65. Why is that? It's mainly because of a polluted environment. So if you live in those places, I strongly suggest you move out and go and live somewhere like I did. I moved out of Cardiff, which is a pleasant city, but it doesn't have many trees. It mainly has traffic and buildings. And so I moved into the beautiful little town of Abergavenny. I'm surrounded by a nature park. I have lots of trees, clean air, clean water, space, birds, all the good stuff here. So people, they know that people who moved out of the danger zones, they live longer because of it. So if you know that you're living in one of those places and you care about how long you live, I suggest you move out. And they a new thing for me is I'm trying to get rid of all my plastic containers because the chemicals in there go into your food, and it's also a constant toxin that you take in. So I'm now starting to buy all of these glass containers to take my food to work. And yeah, and a very, very hard thing to do for people who are carers is if you don't have good night's sleep, it shortens your life also. So people who have to work night shifts, if you can avoid it, or if you're already unwell, well, that's one of the things you can do to feel better is stop working night shifts. And because your whole hormonal axis gets confused if you're up at night and have to sleep while it's light outside. So it has a very big effect on your whole body
Mm.
survival.
How many hours sleep do you say most people need, Dr. V?
Between 7 and 9.
The,
It's a little bit of an individual. I figured out for me 7 is enough because when you go to bed before midnight, and I wake up at the same time every morning. And they say it seems to be good for your system to have kind of a routine of bedtime and the time you wake up every day. Your body likes that routine because then your hormones know exactly when to rise, and there's more stability. There's no chaos in your hormonal system when you do that. And yeah, so that's why. And I know you have a, a free ebook or something about sleep, don't
I
you?
do actually. I have a free course. Yes, Eat Sleep Energy,
Yeah.
with lots and lots of useful tips in that. In fact, if anybody is able to jump on our webinar tomorrow, I'm going to be giving away that tomorrow. So yes, Eat Sleep Energy. I think you're absolutely right. Sleep is so important, and my mum always used to say to me, "An hour before midnight is worth 2 hours afterwards." And in fact, there's a bit of
Yeah.
research now that proves that is actually true. So if one can get to bed a bit earlier than normal, then that can be hugely beneficial as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we spoke a little bit about the things to avoid and the things that I like teach my clients to implement more is, of course, everybody knows about the regular exercise, and it doesn't have to be marathons. Just 10,000 steps a day is enough. You just brisk walking. Also, and we both agree on that, having pets is really good for you because the hormones you produce when you pet a cat or a dog is are the ones that make you feel relaxed. It's the dopamine. For instance, when you cuddle, I mean, you can cuddle humans also, of course, but I mean, for people who don't have a partner to cuddle or children to cuddle, a pet is a good option. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of pets that you can adopt from a shelter somewhere. Um, Also, yeah, we spoke about sleeping, and then turns out that the most important factor for longevity is not exercise or what you eat, but actually that you have a community that supports you. Hence, a lot of, well, there was a study in Scandinavia done maybe 20 years ago where they found that when the in couples, when the wife died, the husband didn't survive long afterwards, and it's probably because they stopped eating vegetables, but it's also the lack of care and support. And um, so community, that's why the places in the world where people live in communities, like the small islands in the Mediterranean, like Sardinia, and there's also a place in America where they have a very strong community and they have people that live a lot longer than the rest of the state and the country because they care for each other so well. And it's the same in that place in Japan where people live really long. It's because they have a social system in place where they take care of the people when they're in need, and they know that the rest of the place will take care of them.
I think,
So
I
that's
think,
less stressful then.
yeah, I think that stands to reason. This morning, because it's evening here where I am, but this morning I attended a breakfast at my husband's Coast Guard organisation, and David's been a member of the Coast Guard for years, and it's such a really super bunch of people that are these volunteer Coast Guards and help people when they capsize at sea and so on. So this morning, some of the wives and partners or husbands or whatever were invited to go along, and it was a really lovely event. And again, you have a community there of people who see you once a month, or David's actually on for a week every month as part of his shift. He's a section leader there. But it really struck me that it's so nice to be part of a group or a community like that. So I think you're absolutely right. If you don't know your neighbours, or if you don't have close work relationships or family or whatever, it's about doing as much as you can, I think, isn't it? To be part of a group, a community like that makes a big difference to one's well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so even when you're retired and maybe you're living alone, then it's so beneficial for you to get out there and volunteer, so that you still have that social contact, that you feel useful, that you get out and have a reason to get out of bed in the morning. Yeah, and I mean, this is not shocking, but they actually have the figures now to correlate communities where people are cared for. The longevity is better in these areas than big cities where people don't know their neighbors, for instance. So, and also, of course, we know that in the Mediterranean, they have this beautiful Mediterranean diet, and the other places also live on the coast, so they eat fresh fish, which we know is really good for you because of the omega, um, the fish oils in it. So, and then of course all the fresh vegetables that they eat and the warm tomatoes.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes, I think
um
having access to fresh vegetables, herbs, salads, fruits, and being able to get
mhm.
them really fresh, perhaps seasonal, unprocessed, organic,
Local. Yeah,
can have a huge impact.
absolutely. There was something else that just skipped my mind actually. I don't think this is the place on this Facebook live to go back into the body's defense systems, because we've already addressed the microbiome previously. We've already spoken about telomerases. You explained very nicely how that's the unwinding of the DNA, and that your DNA gets less protected once you lose your little telomeres. So, what else do you want to talk about in this Facebook Live? Seeing that we're going to do like a very extensive webinar tomorrow.
Yes, I think it's been really wonderful to see you, and thank you for everybody who's jumped on and watched this, and who I know will watch the recording as well. But let's do a full webinar on this tomorrow. It's such an important subject. 80% of the population now are said to be suffering the negative effects of chronic stress. We know that a lot of people are also suffering from burnout, but there are things you can do. You've got your 3 secrets about how to deal with that, and we know there are some specific steps to take. So let's I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know it's your Sunday morning. I'm super grateful to you, Dr. V, for jumping on with us, but I'll post some links to our webinar tomorrow and we'll go into detail then. Thank you so much for jumping on with us today.
All right, enjoy your Sunday too.
Thank you. And I must say, you are a living, breathing inspiration, because you're looking fantastic. So I know you've overcome so many challenges in your own life, and you do such a lot of good work for so many people all around the world. So we're very inspired by you, and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow, Dr. V. Thank you so much.
All right, bye.
Okay, so from Dr. Vela Van Tricht in the UK, and from me, Angela Wright, co-founder at Get Your Boom Back, it's bye from us for now, and we very much hope to see you tomorrow. Thanks so much. Bye for now.